Hey guys, it's the Joe Gaither Show. We're right here at State Farm Arena. Hope you guys are having a great Friday today. I'm having a great Friday. We're right here live for BamaCentral at BamaCentral.com. You're watching the Joe Gaither Show on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of an interesting show, talking to whoever we can find here at the Final Four. We're here at State Farm Arena. We already talked to Nate Oates. We talked to Mark Shears, Rylan Griffin, and the like. And we're going to see who else we can find as it's a historic weekend here at the Final Four. As always, you can follow us at Joe Gaither6. You can send me your questions, comments, and queries and complaints right there. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. Let's see who we run into and see if we can have a good show today as Alabama is getting ready to play the Final Four against the UConn Huskies. All right, we're back here at State Farm Arena. It's the Joe Gaither Show at BamaCentral at BamaCentral.com, and we are watching the defending national champions. The unbeatable machine of UConn is out here. Donovan Clingan out here with Kels Dayton from the Hartford Courant. And this is all we have for him. I'm all new. This is all new for me, and I'm overwhelmed. But you're the old veteran. What is the key? How has UConn maintained its edge all season long? Over 30 wins and really multiple double-digit tournament wins. They look unbeatable. How have they maintained the edge to come out each and every game as the disrespected?
Yeah, I think it all starts with Dan Hurley. I think he finds ways to say that they're disrespected and find slights. We were just talking about how the plane ride here was even an issue for them getting the plane and getting in here. And then some of the hotel beds that some of the kids had in their rooms, a little bit smaller, I guess, than some of the NC State kids. So there's always something he's able to find a slight and an edge, and it's worked, obviously.
Well, so we were talking, the Bama beat, basically, we're talking about Zach Edey's comments yesterday. Oh, there are 3 teams with good big men. And we said, we know that Dan Hurley is going to go to Donovan Clingan and said, you got left out. You are not on his list. What is it about him that makes him the master motivator? You talked about the slights, but he really is able to convince these guys. They look unbeatable, but these guys feel like maybe they're the underdog.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? Coming in here 30, whatever they are, and 3. And yeah, I think it probably all goes back to his father, Bob Hurley, coaching, and a lot of those old tricks and tactics that he used to motivate his players. I think there's a lot of that stuff that has been passed down. But I think it's just his personality, too. He's so fiery. He's so passionate. He loves the game so much. I think he's just looking for any edge he could possibly get, and it shows, obviously.
Okay, so there's a really interesting connection with Dan Hurley and Nate Oates. Basically, Dan Hurley gave him the olive branch into college coaching. And so without that olive branch, maybe you don't – Alabama, goodness gracious, was floundering without him, losing in the first round of the NIT at home before they hired Nate Oates. So what do you think – I walking into the week was thinking, okay, Nate Oates has a little Dan Hurley file in his mind. Do you think that might be the case, or what do you think the relationship between the coaches, how do you think that involves or impacts the game?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, honestly, going back to Buffalo when they're both on the staff there, I think there's got to be a bunch of things that he's known from what Hurley used to do back then and some of his tendencies and things that he likes. I think it's got to be kind of tough. Maybe it makes it a little bit more of a closer matchup than it otherwise would have been because he knows more about what Dan likes to do, and so I think there is something there that maybe can be exploited a little bit.
We're talking to Kels Dayton of the Hartford Courant right here on the Joe Gaither Show, and we're watching the defending national champions. Okay, from the Alabama side, you've been talking all week, all right, if you ramp up the pace, that's what's going to take UConn out. How will the pace really affect the UConn Huskies?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that's the strategy that's going to work. Honestly, I think UConn loves to run up and down the court as well. I think they like to get out in transition. I know Alabama, they can score with the best of them. They have this year in college basketball, but I'm not sure if that's the strategy that's going to work. They just have so many different guys who can beat you. I know when you're running up and down, it's tough for Clingan to maybe dominate inside, and maybe that's what they're thinking, but there's so many three-point shooters. Tristan Newton's done such a great job at point this year for UConn. They can really push it as well. I really don't even know. I kind of almost think it has to go the other way, where if it was a half-court game and you can kind of get Clingan in foul trouble, maybe UConn's not shooting that well, having a bad night from 3, maybe that's what allows Alabama to take them down. I'm not sure if you want to run with these guys, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what their game plan is.
All right, so in December, Alabama loses to Balo at Arizona, loses to Kalkbrenner at Creighton, and loses to Zach Edey back-to-back weeks, 3 weeks in a row. What makes Clingan so special? I mean, he's in that class. He might be the head of that class. What makes him so special?
Yeah, that's kind of amazing because coming into the year, you wouldn't have thought that. I think you look at Clingan, like he was obviously a backup last year to Adama Sanogo, and I think he's just improved so much over the year. I think even in the tournament, he's playing his best basketball right now in the NCAA tournament, and I think it really is just his size and fluidity and his athleticism, ability to move laterally. I think I've compared him and Edey a bunch, and I think that's kind of the difference between those two guys, especially when you talk about NBA draft prospects as well. So I just think he just keeps getting better. He's got the post moves of a traditional big, but he can come out and play around the perimeter, make passes, good looks. I think he just has all the skill set that you would want in a college big today.
So it's WrestleMania weekend, and every time I see Donovan Clingan, I think of Gunther, the Intercontinental Champion right now that cannot be beaten based off storylines. He just looks, I mean, here he is, popping threes so casually, like he's unbeatable. What do you think of Castle, the point guard, his impact on the game? Because we got to see a couple of minutes of practice on Tuesday before the team went out. And it seemed like Coach Oates might be playing around with the idea of taking the North Carolina game plan, sagging off Castle, seeing if he wants to shoot. What do you think? I mean, he's obviously a lottery pick. He's obviously very well thought of, but he's not shot from three very well this year. How do you think he can impact the game if he's left alone?
Yeah, I think that is actually a good idea for him. I think that's probably the way to guard him because you don't want him to get him downhill and attacking the basket. So I think that is a good idea, and maybe packing the paint as much as you possibly can as well. Anything you can do against those guys. I think you're right. Like Alabama or UConn has to have an off shooting night, I think, for Alabama to compete. But it'll be interesting to see how they match up and defend them.
It's been a lot of fun already for me this morning. Thank you so much for joining me. We've been talking to Kels Dayton of the Hartford Courant. Please make sure you follow him. Tell the people where they can follow your coverage because we're going to want to see. Look. If Alabama wins, we're going to want to read all about it. So let's hear it.
Yeah, you can find us on current.com/sports. Of course, that's our sports site. You can find my stuff on Twitter at Kels Dayton, or X now, at Kels Dayton. And you can also follow the at UConn Insider account as well.
Saturday night, Alabama and UConn. We'll see what shakes out. Will Goliath win and get to the national championship again, or can Alabama pull off an upset? We'll see, and you can cover it and follow it right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com. All right, welcome back to the Joe Gaither Show. We are here in State Farm Arena. I just got done talking to Kels Dayton, and we just finished watching. Oh my gosh, the big bad UConn Huskies finished their practice. Donovan Clingan looks even bigger in person. So I'm here with Blake Byler, our basketball expert for BamaCentral.com. Blake, we spent some time talking to Nate Oates, Mark Sears. We talked to really everybody on the team, and then they practiced a little bit. So what did you see today? I mean, about an hour or so. Yeah. What did you see in practice?
I mean, these practices, especially the ones that are open to fans, they're not going to do anything, crazy. They're not going to run through sets. They're not going to
no plays,
do scout team or anything like that. A lot of things, they shot the ball a lot, which I think is important in a venue like this because, it's strange. It's a basketball court in the middle of a football stadium, and so sight lines are different. The bench is below the court, like you can see right over there. When you're shooting in the corner, there's a lot more. I mean, yeah, you could turn it and show it. When you're shooting in the corner, there's a ton of space on the other side of the goal. There's a ton of space behind the goal. And so just from a shooting perspective, it's very different. It's something they're going to have to get acclimated to. It's good that they were here yesterday. They had a real practice yesterday, and then today they shot the ball a lot. That was the most of what they did in practice. We did see Latrell Reitzel. John Rothstein of CBS Sports did confirm that Reitzel will be available to play tomorrow, so that's big. I mean, he looked about as comfortable as he could out there. He shot the ball well. They didn't go through anything live, so we didn't see anything like that. But then pretty much the rest of the time they split into guards and bigs. The guards shot the ball a lot more, and then bigs worked with kind of screen and rolls, finishing at the rim, all that kind of stuff. So we didn't see a ton at practice, but we saw enough. They got to get some important shots up in a new, unique, kind of strange venue, and so I think it went about as well as it could for them.
All right, so this is my first Final Four. I've never seen a basketball floor in the middle of a football stadium, an NFL stadium at that. You talk about the sidelines. You're a shooter. You're a basketball coach. I was an awful shooter in high school. Awful, like 8%. Awful. What does the sightlines really do? You hit on the space. The roof is even bigger. I mean, it's just so different. What's the easiest way, or what's the best way to get comfortable?
The best way to get comfortable is just shoot. Like, you just have to get used to and like acclimated to it. Like if you see a lot of space behind the goal, a lot of times guys may undershoot, trying to it just looks different. It just depth of your depth perception is off compared to a normal gym like luckily for Alabama, like sometimes guys are bothered by the color of seats and all these different things that can throw shooters off. There's some red seats in this building. Coleman Coliseum has red seats, so that's something they could be used to. But it's different than like your practice gym where there's walls all around. But like they're shooting a lot. They've shot a lot in the last couple of days, and so that should get them pretty acclimated to it, I would think.
All right, so we're doing a lot of work, and you can read it at BamaCentral.com. Read everything that Blake's put in his practice notes, and we've got different storylines from what we've heard in the last hour or two. Blake, I'm looking over to my left, and Dan Hurley's getting interviewed. And look, my Alabama in me says, oh, boo-hoo, we don't like you this weekend. But goodness gracious, objectively speaking, is he the best coach going in college basketball right now? And secondarily, how does he keep his guys convinced that it's UConn against the world?
I mean, it's almost Saban-esque to a degree, the way that he's able to consistently motivate this team, especially coming off of a national championship last year. You're the number one overall seed if you're UConn, and you've played a bunch of teams that are underdogs that you've been heavy favorites against, and every single time they're winning the game by 20, 25. So it feels almost like Alabama did early under Nick Saban whenever they would come off of a national championship and still be dominant, and they wouldn't have any complacency. So from a motivation standpoint, Dan Hurley is one of the best there is in college basketball, and also just from a coaching perspective. I mean, he's the face of this new wave of college basketball coaches, and he's on the young side for coaching. I think he's early 50s, and so he's going to be around for a really long time. And this, like the wave that I grew up with of like Coach K, Roy Williams, Jim Boeheim, Jay Wright have all kind of phased out of the game. And now you look at the future of the game, and Dan Hurley is right there, already has a national championship. He's right here chasing another 2 Final Fours in 2 years. Like he is, if not the best college basketball coach in the country right now, he's one of them, and he's going to be for a really long time.
We're talking to Blake Byler, and you're already following him on Twitter or X at Blake Byler45. Giving you all kinds of great Alabama basketball coverage and much more. All right, there's been a lot made, look, in football with Nick Saban. It's Nick Saban against his former assistants, Lane Kiffin, Kirby Smart, his whole big coaching tree. Nate and Dan Hurley Dan Hurley never worked for Nate, and Nate was on staff at Buffalo, so he's not really in the tree per se, but there are similarities here. People always make it about Saban and his assistants those weeks of the game. Is there going to be any sort of familiarity factor, or I'm going to get my friend to do this so that I can trick him and do that? Is there going to be some strategic advantage for one side or the other because they know each other so well?
I don't know if there's going to be an advantage necessarily, but I do think like it's a unique situation because they are two really close friends. Like we've heard all about Nate's own connection to the Hurley family. He worked for Bobby at Buffalo, and before that, he actually met Bobby through Dan because Dan recruited one of his kids at Romulus. And so while Nate was a high school coach at Romulus, Dan starts recruiting his kid to Rhode Island, and then he meets Bobby. Nate gets the job at Buffalo, then he takes over, and now here we are. Dan's at UConn, Nate's at Alabama, and they're both in the Final Four. And so it's cool. Nate's talked about how it's exciting and kind of cool. Also, they're playing in Phoenix, which is where Bobby coaches. Bobby is at Arizona State, so there's another fun little wrinkle there. But I think it's more just going to be a game between two friends, two guys that have a lot of respect for each other, and it's going to be fun to see two really strong competitors go at it. But I don't know if it's going to necessarily have an advantage one way or another.
All right, 2 more for you, and we'll get out of here. Number 1, we just watched UConn get off the floor. Obviously, the practice is very similar to Alabama, lots of shooting. So you're not seeing sets or strategies. But what was your impressions of the defending national champions?
I didn't watch a ton of their practice because I was sitting here working, but I think just the thing that stuck out to me was passing Donovan Clingan in the hallway. Because that dude, I haven't passed Zach Edey yet, to be fair. I haven't seen him around here yet, but Clingan is just a monster of a basketball player. I mean, he's 7'2", long, arms are hanging all the way down to his knees almost. It feels like he's going to be a handful. And we've been in locker rooms, we've been next to Grant Nelson, we've been next to Nick Pringle, Alabama's bigs. Clingan is much bigger. He's bigger and he looks very imposing. So just from seeing UConn on the floor, from walking by them in the tunnels, just his size, it's hard to not marvel at it.
Last thing for us, as we're still sitting here at State Farm Arena, College All-Star game getting ready to get started, but this is just exhibition. Blake, we're not going to have you on tomorrow, so what do you think's going to happen?
I think Alabama can compete with UConn. I think they are capable. I think they have the weapons as far as shooting goes, as far as offensive capabilities to compete. It's going to take a lot, though, because Clingan is a handful inside. Alabama has struggled with interior defense for a lot of this season. They're going to have to make a lot of threes, and they're going to, honestly, Grant Nelson's probably going to have to hit a couple threes to pull Clingan out of the paint and make things a little easier for Alabama's guards getting downhill. If that happens, I can see Alabama in the game. And if Alabama's in the game late, UConn hasn't played in a close game really in 2 straight NCAA tournaments. They've kind of blown out everybody they've played. Alabama's been in a close game every game after the first round this year. So I trust Alabama to be able to execute in a late game situation. Just the question is, do they get there? I think UConn is going to win by 8 to 10. I just think they're too good. I think they're going to overpower Alabama, but I could be wrong. I was wrong about North Carolina on your show just 2 weeks ago, or just a week ago.
So was I. It's okay. You were alone.
Yeah, so I could also see a world where Alabama makes 23s and is right there in it at the under 4, and we've got a 3-point ball game. I could see that. But I think if I had to pick, I would go with UConn. I would go with the defending champs to get back to the championship game.
5 times in the Nate Oates era has Alabama made 20 or more threes.
Yep.
If they can make it a 6 and make Saturday night a very interesting game.
It would be very interesting.
You're going to follow Blake Byler at Blake Byler 45. You're going to follow him for 2 reasons. 1, win or lose, or win, you're going to follow him for Monday night coverage. Lose, you're going to follow him for what happens to this roster after Saturday night, because that brings lots of questions in and of itself. Blake, I appreciate your time. We're going to have a fun weekend, man. It's going to be a blast. Follow him at Blake Byler 45, and make sure you read all his great work at BamaCentral.com. All right, we're back here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central with, is it the lead beat writer ever on Alabama's beat, Charlie Potter? Oh my gosh, you're already following Charlie Potter at Charlie_Potter on X or Twitter. Right there, writing for Bama Online and On 3, literally writing football, basketball, and everything else. Charlie, what's your experience? I mean, you've covered lots of Alabama football in the finals and in championship games. What's this mean to you to be covering basketball in a Final Four?
It's crazy. I don't think a lot of people envisioned this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. But no, I've watched some bad basketball in my time. I've covered basketball since 2012. So to be here is a surreal moment. It does feel a lot like the college football playoff, like you're saying, the magnitude, just the way the event's set up. But it's been pretty cool so far, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
All right, so you've got a lot of the Alabama contingent saying, okay, pulling off a miracle. What's your objective? Is there any way that Alabama can get this done and advance to Monday night's national championship game?
I think they can. It's going to take a perfect game. They're going to have to play like they did defensively against Grand Canyon. They're going to need to play offensively like they did in the second half against Clemson. But I think the players they're motivated. They're confident. Hearing from guys like Grant Nelson, Mark Sears, they're excited to be here. They're happy to be at a Final Four, to bring Alabama their first Final Four, but they want to play and win a national championship. So I think that the players are motivated. Now, it's easy to say that right now, but I think they kind of feel slighted. They feel the motivation because everybody's talking about UConn, deservedly so. But I think that Alabama has a shot. They're just going to have to play one of their best games, if not their best game of the season.
Zach Eady said it yesterday. There are three good big men in the Final Four. You're talking about the slight there. Really, what is Alabama's? How do they go about defending Donovan Clingan without one of those big men?
It's going to be tough. I mean, I get what he's saying, but Alabama's played pretty well these last two games against pretty good big men. Baycott's really great at North Carolina. You have P.J. Hall, who gave Alabama problems earlier in the season. Klingan's a little bit of a different animal. He's a big dude. He's not quite as big as Edey, but really big. And they're gonna have to play a really good game. Guys like Pringle, Grant, Mowage, if he gets in the game, they're gonna have to stay out of foul trouble. They're gonna have to make it to where he's just not clogging up the lane. And so it's easier said than done. It's a tough task, but it's a tall task too, literally. But I do think that it sounds like they have a good game plan. They're pretty confident in that one.
You talk about the game plan, and we saw a little bit of it on Tuesday in open practice. I think that it's as good a game plan as they can get. Alabama has seemed to roll out a bunch of good game plans. What is it about Nate Oates and the staff? I mean, we're seeing Clonch is going to be taking a head coaching position, and Ryan Pannone is a finalist for another head coaching position. This staff just seems to, no matter who the opponent is, we're going to have a good plan, and if the guys execute, they'll be in the game at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see the analytic approach that Oates and his staff take. That's unquestioned. But I do think like having former head coaches, whether it's Clonch at Nicholls State or what a guy like Ryan Pannone's done in the NBA, the G League, all those levels, those guys are prepared. And they watch a ton of film. I don't know if anybody watches more film than Ryan Pannone. So they have had a little bit more time to look at this UConn team. Again, the players, the coaches, they seem confident, they seem loose. I think the plan they have in place, which we don't know, why would we? But I think that it's seemingly a good one. We'll see, like you said, it's up to the players to execute it.
All right, so Alabama has hit 19 threes twice this year, 19 of 46 against Purdue and 19 a little bit later a week later against Eastern Kentucky. Can they get up to 20? Only 5 times in the Nate Oates era have they gone 20 or more. The sight lines were my discussion with Blake Byler, the football stadium sight lines. How do you think shooting, Latrell Wrightso, he's going to be back in action, shooting in a big stadium?
It's something I'm interested to see because it is a weird setup being in a football stadium like this. But you're looking at a situation where I don't know if Alabama, the volume has to be there. I agree. If they were to come out and hit 23s, I think you have to feel really good about their chances. I think that it's the quality and then the percentage. If they shoot over 40% from three, I think you have to feel pretty good about where things stand. So it's going to be tough because UConn, as good as they are offensively, they're equally as good on the defensive end of the floor, especially on the perimeter. So for me, I think it's quality more than quantity. But Alabama's going to do both, I think.
Just a couple more minutes with Charlie Potter, and you're already following him at Charlie_Potter on the X or Twitter machine. Charlie, as you talk about the defense, Nate Oates yesterday was pretty quick to say, we're not 105, we're not 101. Look at our last 4 games, and we're in the 30s. Okay, great. Well, we'll take a small sample size. But what was the difference over the last couple of weeks? You've heard him attribute Mark Sears' leadership. What's the difference on the defensive side to say, we're not absolutely awful, we're average or better?
Yeah, I don't think they're a bad defensive team, but they've been much better in the tournament. And like you said, I think a key to that is Mark Sears. He has been really locked in on the defensive end of the floor, and I think it's been contagious. That kind of sounds lame. I understand that. But the players seem to have fed off of what he's been able to do. And I think Alabama would do well with having Grant Hill in the
yes.
But it's a situation where I think it's been infectious to the other players to have your leader, your guy that is your leading scorer. He's going to go out and get 20 points a night. For him to play well in the defensive end of the floor, nobody else has an excuse. I think that's really what it's boiled down to. Again, that's really obvious, it feels like. But at the end of the day, when you have an offense like Alabama that isn't playing well on defense, if the guys are playing equally as hard on both ends of the floor, it kind of translates.
Last thing for us as we're hanging out in the bowels of State Farm Arena on Friday, Nick Pringle and his heel. Nick Pringle's had a heck of a postseason. I'm not on the trip to Spokane. I'm flying myself to Spokane. I'm playing really above my level over 4 games, but he's also hurt. Just what's the dynamic with Nick Pringle, and how important will he be on Saturday?
I think he's big against Clingan, and you're right. He's really toughed out a lot of these games. You can tell that heel is bothering him, but he's been adamant. Like, unless his leg is off of his body, he's going to be playing. And he's been, again, that leadership that he's provided has been key, but he's played well. He's played well on the defensive end of the floor. He's grabbed rebounds. He's been pretty good at the free throw line. He could probably be a little better. But I think that Nick's been great in this run. You can kind of attribute a lot of different guys to the success of Alabama's run through the tournament. We saw Mo Diabate against Grand Canyon, what Grant Nelson did against North Carolina, Jaron Stevenson against Clemson. But Nick Pringle's kind of been consistent throughout this, and that's been huge for Alabama, I think.
Is it going to be the Sam Walters game on Saturday or someone else instead?
It could be Sam's game. I think Alabama would like to see a big game from Aaron Estrada. He feels due. And for him, he's a guy that this could very well be his last ever college game. So I think he would like to continue playing. And that's a guy that I'm really watching to see. If he plays well, I think Alabama can play well.
He's Charlie Potter, and you're already following him at Charlie_Potter. Make sure you subscribe to Bama Online and On3 Sports for all his great information. They've got lots of great intel, things that aren't always out there quite yet. Charlie, thanks for your time.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we're back, and it is the conclusion of today's Joe Gaither show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. You can see by the background I have left State Farm Arena. I'm actually in the hotel. Everybody is asleep. Everybody is sleeping and waiting on tomorrow's Final Four game, and I am so excited. Games, really, with NC State and Purdue as well. I'm just so excited to be out here. The pageantry in State Farm Arena today was really something to behold. Nothing, I thought the experience at the SEC tournament was incredible with all 14 SEC teams really in the venue at the same time. I guess on that Friday, with only 2, 4, 6, 8 of the 14 that I experienced. So I just thought it was very unique to have those 8 schools really represented in Nashville. But now here we are in State Farm Arena. Here we are in Glendale, Arizona. The stage is so much bigger. I mean, yeah, you think about the SEC tournament and you want to win it, and that's great. But the stakes are so much higher here at the Final Four. What's going to be the keys? We talked about it a couple days ago on the show that I think Alabama has to hit 16 three-point shots. After talking today, oh gosh, I feel like the number might be closer to 19. I talked to a lot of different people today, and you saw some of those conversations right here with Blake Byler and Charlie Potter, right here on the on the Joe Gaither show. I think that you're going to have to shoot between 16 or more, and you're going to have to make at 40% or higher tomorrow. Now, what did I just do while Blake Byler and all our friends were getting to sleep is I just watched Alabama and UConn from 2022. Okay, I know Brandon Miller and Javon Quinterly and Amari Burnett and Charles Bediako won't be on the court for Alabama, so it's going to be a much different game. Likewise, for UConn, Adama Sanogo is not going to be on the court for them, and Jordan Hawkins as well. So they have a lot of new players, that will be on the floor tomorrow night. And so it's not an exact one-to-one comparison. It's not an exact, you can draw from this from last year's game like you could with the Clemson game. But what did I notice in the game that I just watched, the Phil Knight Invitational up there in Portland? UConn beat Alabama 82-67. UConn jumped out to a pretty nice little lead. I think it was 15 points in the first half because Alabama turned the basketball over a bunch of times, 15 times in the first half. And you ended up finding yourself into a little bit of a hole. Now, Alabama dug their way out of it and closed the half at just a 5-point deficit and ended up really getting all the way even to UConn in the second half before UConn really stepped it up and blew it away. You got to protect the basketball tomorrow. You absolutely have to. One of my keys in the earlier episode was Alabama having 13 or fewer turnovers in the 3 games that UConn has lost this year. Creighton, Kansas, and St. John's. Seton Hall, not St. John's. Seton Hall, Creighton, and Kansas. All 3 teams had fewer than 12 turnovers. And I think Alabama, look, we've talked about the bad defense and the good defense and the improvement, this, that, and the other. But one way to help hurt a bad defense is to turn the basketball over and have a bunch of live ball turnovers. So tomorrow, look, you can't start the basketball game with 15 turnovers like they did in 2022 up there in Oregon. You can't do it. And you've got to get after it on the glass. My biggest concern for Alabama is not necessarily Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan is the obvious is the obvious, not elephant in the room, the husky in the room. And he's going to get his points. He's going to be incredible. He's going to have a pretty good game. We saw him today in State Farm Arena, and he looks every bit as imposing as he does on television. It's going to be a problem for Alabama. But I think the Alabama game plan is going to be to send doubles at him, to be, clamping down from the guards, and to maybe trap on the pass, that sort of thing. I think they're going to see a lot of different ways to get after Donovan Clingan. My biggest concern is really guys like Alex Caravan and Tristan Newton. Tristan Newton's still up there at UConn. Really, it's Alex Caravan, but Tristan Newton as well on the offensive glass. You get bodies into Donovan Clingan. All right, you get Pringle into Donovan Clingan. You get a helper into Donovan Clingan. Well, who's boxing out? Who's boxing out Alex Caravan? And who's boxing out Tristan Newton? How are you keeping those two guys off the offensive glass? Because look, the good defense, the better defense, the improved defense, it's only as good as the defensive rebound to clear the glass and end the possession. You get them into a tough shot, great, all right, no big deal. The shot goes up. You have to finish the possession by getting the rebound. It's worthless to play good defense for 24 seconds if you're just going to give up an offensive rebound to Alex Caravan, Tristan Newton, or even Donovan Clingan. It's worthless. And so tomorrow, those are kind of my biggest things that I'm looking for. Not necessarily the shot making. I know we started with that, but protecting the basketball and generating shots on every possession. You cannot have empty possessions against the UConn Huskies. And I think that's going to be the quickest way to ensure that you don't have any empty possessions. Protect the basketball. The other big thing that I noticed in the game, and while, Adama Sanogo is not going to be out there for UConn blocked a lot of shots in that November game. You look at the stat sheet, and it tells you 7 blocked shots for UConn in that game. But I think that's low. I think that whoever was keeping the official statistics, that's low. So you had a lot of guys driving into Adama Sanogo and driving into Donovan Clingan and driving into the Tristan Newtons and Alex Caravans last year. And obviously, Javon Quinterly was, he got to the rim fairly well, but we all remember that finishing wasn't always, we love the pretty finger roll and the jelly roll, but finishing wasn't always his best suit. And it was early in the year. It was late November, so it was one of the bigger early games of the year for Alabama. One of the first big opponents for the Crimson Tide. You can't be afraid tomorrow. You can't be afraid. Mark Sears, he's 6'1". He might be 5'11". He's probably 66 even. You're going to have to get Mark, whatever. How he's very crafty. You're going to have to get shots up, and you're going to have to get past the shot blockers. And if it's and if you are getting shots blocked, you're going to have to adjust quickly to kick out to the 3-point line. And really, most importantly for Alabama, oh my gosh, can Grant Nelson. If Grant Nelson gets out there and makes 1 or 2 early 3-point shots, you draw Donovan Clingan away from the post a little bit. You open up the driving lanes, and boom, Mark Sears is getting downhill right to the goal and finishing with the left hand and kicking out to Aaron Estrada and kicking out to really a bunch of great shooters. I think that is the biggest key offensively for Alabama. Grant Nelson, can you tap into whatever you found in the North Carolina game and make a couple early threes to really affect Donovan Clingan? Look, Alabama has their work cut out for them. 7:49 on TBS. You'll be able to follow it right here at BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. Myself, Katie Wyndham, and Blake Byler will be sitting right there courtside. It was a beautiful facility today. It was really exciting to hear from Nate Oates, getting Alabama into this position for the first time in school history. But we'll see how they can maybe capture the moment and hope, and ideally, for the Alabama perspective, not be happy to be there and be hungry to finish the drill. My thoughts go to Kobe Bryant. Oh, Kobe, you're smiling. You're not smiling. What's wrong? Oh, what's there to be happy about? Job's not finished. Oh, you're up 2-0. You're not happy? We're up 2-0. Job's not finished. Granted. It's not a 4-game series or 7-game series. If it was, Alabama would be in even deeper trouble. But yeah, the job's not finished for Alabama. You're going to have to see if they can roll the dice tomorrow and have it come up 7s one more time. Look, the defense has been improved. The offense it is what it is. Basically, you're going to get Lautaro Reitzel back in action. Can you put out a performance that is right in line with what you've done all season long? I think they will. I think they will. I think that the Alabama team is quietly confident in themselves, and we've talked about it with different people, but I think they're very loose. I mean, they know that they're an 11.5 point underdog. They obviously see that, and they obviously know UConn defending national champions. And look, Mark Sears, Ryland Griffin, and Nick Pringle, they were involved in that game in November of last year, of 22, really. So they remember really kind of the snowball effect. Look, when Alabama got the game back to almost even in the second half, UConn basically slammed the door. They said, "Hey, we ain't messing with this." They slammed the door. They ramped it up defensively. They turned Alabama over even more in the second half, and really closed the game very strong, winning 82-67. So it wasn't really never finished that tight. What's that? 10-5, 15 points, right? Comfortable win for UConn, and obviously they went on to win the national championship, and great for them. And Alabama had a pretty strong season. What, 18 months later? Is that about right? A year is November 22. That's 12. A year plus 4. Yeah, about 16 months later, Alabama has a chance to avenge the loss up there in Oregon and really shock the world. I mean, no one around here, and even the people that I went to dinner with at different times, no, I don't think that anyone is really wagering on Alabama or putting their stock or putting their hope in Alabama winning. But as we close down this Friday edition of the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com, we probably want to leave you with a prediction, because the next time you hear from us will either be Sunday morning talking about a national championship game, or we'll be Sunday morning talking about a loss and talking about roster changes for the next year. And I've already got my list of guys who I think will be here and won't be here next season, and we'll talk about that at the appropriate time. But it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. And with us closing down, I think it's probably time for me to nail down a prediction. Oh gosh, I don't really, I need to go with my gut, and I need to go with what I feel, and I do think that I am gonna stick with my gut, but I can't reconcile it with my brain. My brain says, oh, Alabama's going to lose, and it's going to be lose by 6, lose by 7. But my gut just tells me that the Crimson Tide's going to do something historic tomorrow. You look at the matchup predictor on ESPN, giving Alabama a 28% chance to win. Oh gosh, you look through, still sitting the line at 11 and a half. You look at the guy, the teams who is where am I looking? UConn, their average points per game. Look, I do think Alabama's going to win. I'm just trying to stall and figure out what my score is going to be. Averaging 81 points a game for UConn, giving up only 63. There, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if their offense is not having a great day, their defense is still incredible. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go Alabama. We're going to go Alabama 80. Okay. We'll do this a little smarter. What's the math on 19 threes? 19 times 3 is 57. Yeah, we're going to go with 90. Yeah, 90 points for Alabama. 90. And you know what? It's going to be close. It's going to be a miracle. It's going to be a dramatic game. We'll go 90-88. 90-88. Alabama shocks the world and surprises everyone in State Farm Arena tomorrow night. That's going to be my prediction. You can leave your prediction on the social media machines at Joe Gaither 6 on either Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever you like. You can find me on all the social medias at Joe Gaither 6. You can see all my photos and stuff that I took. I guess a lot of those went to Instagram and Facebook today. Some of them went to Twitter today. So I appreciate everybody who's following us on all the various platforms. You can give us your thoughts on the game in any of the comments, whether it be right here on the website or whether it be in the podcast center on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, or you can leave a comment right there on YouTube, on the YouTube page at the BamaCentral YouTube channel. It's been a lot of fun today hanging out with you guys and seeing and meeting and kind of figuring out this Final Four deal. We want to thank our new friend, Kels Dayton. Kels Dayton joined us from the Hartford Courant today, and he gave us a really good look at the UConn Huskies. I really appreciate him doing that for us. We want to thank always Blake Byland for joining us. He is sound asleep dreaming of Alabama three-pointers as we speak. But we want to thank him for giving his expertise as well. And then, of course, Charlie Potter. First time we had Charlie Potter on the show. We love Charlie on the beat. He's a good buddy of ours, or I think he is from my perspective. So we appreciate having Charlie as well. Make sure you follow all those guys and keep up with us at Bama Central. It's going to be Katie Wyndham, Blake Byler, and myself tomorrow night at State Farm Arena. Well, really tonight, because we're going to run this Saturday morning. So tonight, wake up and get ready. Oh man, pace yourself. 7:49 is going to be. It's going to be a little bit of go do some yard work. Take walk the dog and spend some time with the family before you sit down and lock in for tonight's Final Four. So we're going to get out of here for the day. We're going to be all in on Alabama UConn tomorrow, and then Sunday, win or lose, we will give you an episode. It will either be breaking down the win and talking about playing Purdue or North Carolina State, or it will be breaking down the loss and talking about roster turnover and changes for the coming season. So either way, we'll have an episode on Sunday. I know it's been a really strange week on the show due to travel, due to schedule and calendar stuff. I appreciate everybody who's hung in there with us this week. If you're subscribed to us, I appreciate you. If you haven't, maybe take a little time and hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. You can tell a friend about the show, The Joe Gaither Show, on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.